Welcome to the Mad Singers Management Podcast from madsingers.com, where entrepreneurs and business managers learn and share. If you like the show, don't forget to leave a review.
Hello and welcome to the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Today I have with me Frank. Welcome to the show, Frank.
Hey, thanks for having me. How are you doing today?
I am fan-freaking-tastic.
All right, good.
Another day in heaven. So, Frank, as usual, I was about to say, not everyone in the world yet knows about you. So would you mind giving everyone a little bit of an introduction to who you are and so on?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Frank Agin. I run an organization in the United States called Spirit Business Connections. We're a organization that brings together entrepreneurs, sales reps, and professionals and helps them become more successful through networking. That's essentially what I do. Mads, I don't know what kind of a backstory you want. I can kind of give you the whole backstory as how I got into this, and you tell me.
We can. Let's hear a little bit about your background and so on. That's always good to know.
Yeah. I live in Columbus, Ohio, which is in the Midwestern part of the state, in the United States, in the central part. I came to Columbus to go to law school. It's the home of the Ohio State University, one of the big universities in Ohio, in the United States. I came here to go to law school. I got a law degree. I got an MBA, and when I left, I got a job in a really big firm, an international firm doing tax consulting. Good pay, great prestige, great everything. Hated every minute of it, except for the 24 days a year I got paid. And it wasn't, again, the people were great, the work was great, everything was great. It just really wasn't for me. I didn't want to spend my life in the tax code. So after about 6.5 years, which will tell you I'm slow but not stupid, I left and went into private practice of law. And I tell people that a funny thing happened when I went into the private practice of law. And the funny thing was that nothing happened. I had no idea how to get clients. Because when you work in a really big firm, the partners bring in the work and they just tell you to come in 5-6 days a week and work. And so, finding clients, generating revenue was something that was totally foreign to me. And I was that bad actor who was out at chamber events or networking events, just throwing my card around, just hoping I could get business. And it doesn't really, doesn't work that way. So one day I had lunch with a friend of mine, and we went to law school together, and she took a different path. There's a saying in law school, maybe it's in other professional schools, but the saying is this, is that A students become professors, B students become judges, and C students become millionaires. And the reason, it's not necessarily true that C students become millionaires, but C students tend to do well for themselves because the A students get these great jobs and leads to a lot of prestigious things and what we'll call golden handcuffs. C students have to figure things out, and they got to start their own firms, do unique things. And when you do unique things, good things happen. So that was her path. She'd started her own firm. And so I sat down with her. I said, listen, I don't want to fail. I don't want to go begging for my job back and spend, the next 40 years of my life doing taxes. What do I need to do to be successful? And she said, you need to get into a tips club or a leads group. And I had no idea what she was talking about, but through a couple introductions, she introduced me to a group of people that met every week to learn about each other and exchange business. And they were looking for an attorney to join their ranks. So I did. And immediately, Matt, it made perfect sense because here I was in an environment where I could elevate myself by promoting all the people around the room. It's so much easier for me to promote other people than promote myself. It's so much more comfortable. I immediately took to it. Became very, I don't want to say very successful. It didn't just happen like that. Nothing just happens like that. So we, but I could see a path to success.
Yeah.
Running around in chamber events, I couldn't see it, but here I could see the path to success is that I could raise them up and they would raise me up in return. So I was with that for about two years, got really involved with it. Knew the founder, got to know the founder, and was on an advisory board with her. One day we were talking on the phone. She was Pittsburgh, which is 3 hours away. We were talking on the phone. She took a call, put me on hold, got back on the call on the phone with me and said, hey, listen, the guy who's running your local area, he's quit. I don't know what I'm going to do. So we talked about it, and I, said, well, what do you want to do? And she said, well, I'd really love to franchise this. And so in that conversation, she's talking about her vision for franchising it. And I told her, I said, I'll be your first franchisee. 15 days later, I was her first franchisee, and things really started to take off. I still was practicing law. It was geared to do both. And I was it changed the whole trajectory of my life, because I really started to learn about networking, not just doing networking, but why networking worked and why it didn't work. And became what I call a student of networking, meaning and I'm still a student. I'm still learning about it. I have a lot to teach, but I always have a lot to learn. I'm always looking to learn things. And so about 6 years into that, I executed a buyout from her. She was looking to kind of downsize, looking to retire, cash out. And so I bought out the business and rebranded it as AmSpirit Business Connections. And, essentially that's what I do. I don't practice law anymore. I have franchisees myself. We're looking to franchise, and we are franchising, not looking to franchise. We have franchisees out there. So I spend my days working with my franchisees, finding additional franchisees, but helping the membership, just really helping anybody become more successful through networking. It just breaks my heart to see somebody go into business and not be able to sustain it because of just really simple little tweaks as to how they grow their business. So that's my story.
That makes total sense. I can super relate to it. So I'm by nature absolutely very horrible at networking. So when I was 18, I would literally not speak to people I didn't know. And I started getting an interest for management, and I started reading and listening to all this stuff, and they were all like networking. And I'm like, I need to figure this human thing out. So I would literally sit in the bus going to work every morning, and I set myself a goal, just sit down next to someone I don't know and just say hi. And I literally did that for a month. And then for another month, I literally say, hi, how are you? And eventually, that was literally how I started talking to people, if you will. And then about 12 years later, when I left the corporate world and started my own business, literally, I spent about the first 4 years, all my success was literally built on the back of networking. So I didn't have a website. I didn't have anything like that. It was literally just networking, getting to know as many people, as many good people as you can, helping as many people as you can. And very, very quickly, word spread. And every time I walk in somewhere now, it's like, when you start knowing people everywhere, it just helps your presence and it helps everything. So
no, that's a great story. I will share that because really that's what networking is. People think networking is making sales, and selling is kind of the byproduct of networking, but networking is so human. People tell me they're not good at networking, and I ask them, I say, well, are you married? Yeah. Well, how'd you meet your wife? It's not a mail order situation. They met their wife through networking. A friend introduced us or something. That's networking. It's us. Yeah. It's us just interacting with each other. And I think people get tripped up on the sales or the business end of it, and just be a human. Hey, how are you doing? Is really one of the most powerful things you can say to another human being. If you're sincere about it.
Yeah. And actually, the one thing that I learned really quickly was, it's not about getting the sales. I mean, I actually look at it the other way around. The best people, the best leads you can ever get is from someone else, right? Like if you refer someone to me and you're kind of vouching for me, I'm much more likely to close that lead. Whereas if I talk to you directly and you have no reference point, it's much harder, right? So what I found out really, really quickly was, when I started by myself, was really talk to as many people as you can, do them as many favors as possible, help them solve problems by connecting them to other people and whatever. And eventually the more people you help, the more people will talk about you and the more people will send you leads. And that, it works, right? It works really well.
Well, I think that's where people need to aspire to get to. The successful people out there, they're not dialing the phone for dollars. They're not just firing emails out. Much of their business is word of mouth.
Yeah.
Referrals. It just keeps coming in. And that's where people need to aspire to get to, because if you do a good job with that, it really is never ending. It just keeps feeding on itself.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I love it. That's a good sort of business model. Tell me a little bit more about your business. Like, how does it operate, and how does that networking model work?
Yeah, what we do is we create groups of what I call entrepreneurs, sales reps, and professionals, attorneys, accountants, realtors, mortgage lenders, coaches, consultants, various small business types, people who need to be out there on the front end of making sales. They need to grow their business. They're the people responsible for, bringing in the revenue. And so they get together every week and they learn about each other. And through that process, it's a structured meeting. It's not just a networking meeting. It's a structured meeting where everybody's talking about one another. But through that meeting, they learn about each other, develop relationships, because it's all about getting people to know you, like you, and trust you. But the other piece of that is getting people to be able to recognize opportunities. Hey, I was talking to a friend, Frank, and they're looking to lease some office space. I told them they probably need an attorney, and I'm going to have them give you a call, or you should call them. I'm going to have you meet this person because they really need your help. And I know that by the things you have told me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that makes sense.
Yeah. So people pay a membership fee to belong. And I've had people who have been in the organization over 25 years. They go to their weekly meeting, and that's how they generate their business. And again, it gets back to what you're saying. They're not out there knocking on doors, cold calling. Primarily their business is grown through people referring them. That's it.
Yeah, and it's obviously different what you're selling, right? Like, if you're selling more expensive products and services, that works really well. If you're selling plastic cups that are 50 cents each or something, obviously networking can still work, but it's different.
Yeah, right, sure. Yeah. So, it's this, it's not for the retail environment. It's for the professional. It's for the small business person who's doing B2B sales.
Yeah. It sounds somewhat, and I don't really want to say this because I don't like it particularly, but it sounds a little bit like BNI, which I'm sure you know.
Yeah, they are a competitor of ours, and sometimes when I'm talking to people on the phone, I'll short, are you familiar with BNI? And people will say yes. Okay. To the extent you understand them, you understand us. I don't know a lot. I don't know a ton about BNI. But I do have a lot of members and even franchisees who are formerly in BNI. And what they tell me is you've just, Frank, you've put together a kinder and gentler version of it. And I don't want to disparage, BNI is a good organization, but we're very passionate about helping our members, and, we've got a lot of success doing it. So
my experience, I've been at a bunch of BNI meetings, and my experience have been exactly the people handing out cards, and it's like you walk into a meeting and you walk home with 50 cards, and you're like, that was a waste of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all about learning. Learning.
Yep.
So any sort of major tips and tricks? I mean, you obviously have a ton of network experience. So for all my entrepreneurial listeners, any sort of great tips and tricks for what to do? Like, first, I guess, how do you place yourself in these networking environments? Like, what are the advice you have in that regard?
Well, what I tell people with respect to networking is don't get, you really network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We really do. You know, I mean, it's people, you know, okay, I'm going to networking. I'm going to the event that's called networking. I've got to put on my networking hat. You know, when you're at a party, it's networking. When, you know, when you go to church, it's networking. It's interacting with other people. And so you kind of need to be on all the time, you know, just be who you are and be a good person. And really look at, you know, because people will tell me, I hate going to networking events. Okay, that's okay. You don't need to go to networking events. Yeah. One of my the best advice, well, I shouldn't say the best advice, but advice I consistently give for people who are hesitant, don't like to go to networking events, is find something you're passionate about and volunteer. Get out there and volunteer, because networking is really about giving to the world. And so if you find something that you're passionate about and you get out there and you volunteer, you, one, are demonstrating that you're giving to others. Yeah. But the second thing is you're doing it amongst people who have similar interests as you. They've come out of their own little corner of the world to be, you know, doing what you're doing with you, and that immediately networks you. Now it's so much more comfortable because nobody's really talking about their businesses. I do a ton of volunteer type stuff, charitable type stuff that connect a lot of charities, and I never really talk about what I do. Yeah. I don't have to, because if people are interested, they'll find out. You know, I don't have to press myself. So that's probably the first thing is you know, tip is to get out there and volunteer, get involved at, you know, church, kids' schools, community activities. There's so many things out there throughout this world. You know, people there's not enough help in the world. I mean, there's people out there who need the help. And so you just kind of get out there, and that really kind of raises your level of exposure. But, you know, if you feel like you have to go to networking events because of who you are, to really kind of, or not who you are, but what you do, if you feel like you have to go to networking events, what I tell people to do is to go there and, much like your story on the bus, take it slow. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. I mean, people go to networking events and it's like, oh, I need to come away with 5 good prospects. No, just one good contact, just one good person. And, you know, and then people will say, well, geez, I don't know what to say. I hate small talk. I don't know how to, but the key to small talk is simply this: get them talking. Be very interested in what they have to say. Start asking questions, and you would be surprised as to what that does. You know, when you were sharing your story and getting on the bus, and you said, "Okay, I'm just going to say hi to people," and then ask, "Okay, how are you?" It reminded me of a study I read. They did this study over in Poland. It was a university study, and what they did was they put a young woman on the street, and they had her approach 100 people at random. 50 of the people she went up to and just said, "Would you buy a candle from me?" And the other 50, again, all done at random, the other 50 she went up to and said, "How are you doing?" And then if they responded and said, "Well, I'm having a bad day, so I'm really sorry about that," or "Hey, things are great," she'd say, "Oh, I'm really happy to hear that." But then she would follow with, "Would you buy a candle from me?" I mean, that's the smallest little small talk conversation there can be, right? "How are you doing?" "Great." "Oh, glad to hear it." They can't get any smaller than that. Well, what she ended up selling, well, I'll give you the actual numbers. The 50 people that she just went up to and said, "Would you buy a candle for me?" she sold 3. The people that there was this small talk conversation, she ended up selling 11. So it was almost a 4-fold increase by having this little small talk conversation.
I was about to bet at a 3x, but 4x. That's pretty good.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's still not great, right?
Sure.
But anyhow, it goes on in the study, and it talks about as to why this is. And our brains do lots of wonderful things, but one of the things our brains do is it looks for shortcuts. It's generally called heuristic processing. Mm-hmm. And so it looks for shortcuts. And one of the shortcuts it has is, you know, when people are nice to you, when people show an interest in you, you tend to like them and trust them that much quicker. So that's the power of small talk. People think like, okay, I've got to go to this event and I've got to be really articulate and really concise as to what I talk about with respect to myself. And the reality is no, you don't need to say anything about yourself. You just need to go and talk about the game, talk about the weather, talk about politics. Well, maybe not politics, but you know what I'm saying? Just, just be real. People want to have people to be interested in them. And
I like that a lot. Yeah, I think, and that's exactly, I mean, if you go to a lot of these so-called networking events, that's exactly where a lot of people go wrong, right? Like exactly as you say, they come with this, oh, I have to speak with so many people, I have to jump around, and I have to do this, and they have all these preconceived notions that aren't very effective.
Right. Well, I call it sales breath. Right? They've got sales breath. They're trying to make a sale, and the questions they're asking, you can tell, are kind of leading, right? What kind of promotional products do you use? Let me guess, you sell promotional products. So those are leading type questions, and it's counterproductive. You don't want to be dealing with those people, and so the wall goes up, and you don't have a conversation. But if that person came to me and just had a conversation about whatever, a couple things that we have in common, I'm more likely to say, I'll do business with them. There's no guarantee I will, but I'm more likely to.
Yeah, I agree. That makes a lot of sense. So I would say one of my favorite places in the world of finding, and what I always say is I'm not looking for clients, I'm looking for amazing people. And Toastmasters, not sure if you know the organization, but Toastmasters,
it's great.
It's what I love about it is that it's people who come there of their own will, generally, at least where I've been in the world. It's not companies paying for them and so on. So it's people who have to get off the couch and they have to pay a little bit of money out of their own pocket. And majority of people who do that is actually interested in learning skills, developing themselves and pushing themselves, are generally amazing people. And I've been to clubs in probably 3-4 different continents and many different countries. And it's one of those environments that I just always love walking into, because exactly as you say, no one's trying to sell shit. It's just people trying to learn. And
that's a great suggestion of a awesome place to start out with, because nobody's going to be trying to sell to you, and you shouldn't be trying to sell to others for people listening out there. But you're there, and the people are there to genuinely help one another. I spent 3 years in Toastmasters. Wonderful experience, learned a lot, made some great connections through there, and never made a sale, never wanted to make a sale, but that's but it tapped me into some great information. And you can't, that's the other thing, people judge everything by a number of sales they make, and you can't do that because you don't know. I may connect with you and nothing ever transact with respect to business, right? But you introduced me to somebody who introduced me to somebody else, who introduces me to somebody else, who's somebody else, who's my best client ever. You know what? In a roundabout way, you get credit for all of that. So you can't judge. Oh, geez, Mads, that was worthless. You can't judge that. You really can never judge it until, well, you never can. Because things are just in motion.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of business owners, particularly entrepreneurs, I mean, I'm a management coach, so I see it from a lot of sides, right? But I'm always so focused on getting people's head out of the business and into people around them, right? And it's about doing business strategy and all that, but it's just as much, moving from doing shit to managing and leading shit, right? And doing that it's the same kind of mindset, right? It's get out of that routine of just working 1 million hours a day and never having time for anything. The second you start opening up, the second you start having time to go to some events and stuff, that's when things happen, right?
Yeah. When I worked in when I worked in public accounting, or when I was that consultant of the firm, I made a point of going to lunch with people outside the firm once a week. Just people that, because otherwise I would have spent my entire life with tax people, because we work so many hours, and we always go to lunch together, and we'd be there late, and let's go get a beer. Let's just, it's Saturday. Let's, you don't have time to connect with anybody else. And so you just, you get caught in that world, and you need to kind of get outside of that world. And
it sounds so exciting getting stuck in a life with tax accountants.
Yeah.
Excitement at its highest.
Yeah. Yeah. Jokes that nobody gets but tax people. Yeah, it's bad. Good people, but there's just so much more to it.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I would say, I had similar. So I worked corporate many years for IBM, and I spent a lot of time getting to know people elsewhere in the business. Like a lot of people focused on their little square and the people just around them. But I've always, again, since I was sort of learned this whole networking game, I've always been like, it's not just knowing the people up the way, but it's just as much out the way. Because I might not have anything to do with finance department, but someday I need some information, or, I need a favor, or I need something. Right. And, if you know some people in the right places, and like typical things like receptionist, IT, like all those places, like I would always get to know people, because they're the ones that's going to save your ass. And the IT people on a daily basis than once in a while. But, those are the relationship that most people are like, oh, well, that's an IT guy. He doesn't have any role power, or he doesn't have any whatever. But those are the people that eventually makes a huge difference to your operation and to your business, right?
Well, you don't know who people know, and you don't know what they know. You really can't be dismissing people. That that person who pours your coffee, they might be connected to the best opportunity ever. You cannot judge. Every contact's got opportunity. You need to kind of not just look at them, but kind of see through and imagine that there are some really real connections there. And people do that. They'll dismiss people, and they lose out.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's super interesting. And how do you, if it's not a secret formula at least, do you want to talk a little bit about how your network meetings actually work? Like what sort of things you actually talk about, or how do you network when you meet?
Yeah. I mean, there is no secret formula. I mean, I tell people that there's only so many ways you can do a handshake, right? But people come in. The meeting is about an hour and 15 minutes. We start the meeting, quickly review some information about the organization, introduce our guests, and we always have guests. Then the members will go around and they'll introduce themselves and share maybe what's new in since the last week. Quickly, we'll go through what we call officer reports. These groups don't run themselves, and so there's always got to be kind of a focus on things like, okay, who are we working on as far as bringing in as guests? How are we doing with respect to referrals? Because we'll measure that. Not in a bad sense. We never stand at the door and say, hey, Mad, you can't come in. You didn't give any referrals. But if you didn't get any, we certainly want to focus some attention on you and say, well, wait a minute here. We need to try and help everybody. And we got a couple of people who didn't get referrals. So that's part of the officer reports. And, they'll talk about socials they're having. And then every week there's somebody in the chapter who's going to give a presentation about their business. We're going to talk about their business. And what we try and coach people on with respect to talking about their business is that they need to focus on helping the people sitting around the room recognize opportunities. Because really there's only 3 reasons why you're not getting referrals. Only 3 reasons. 1, you don't have enough relationship with somebody. Right? You don't know somebody, you don't like somebody, you don't trust somebody. And those things just take time. So you and I can't just meet and think that the referrals are going to flow. So that's the first thing. You got to have the relationship. But even once you have the relationship, what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to teach the people around you to recognize opportunities. So you're kind of a management consultant type, and that can be kind of a broad term. I just need to know that when I'm talking to somebody and I hear, you tell me, if you hear X, Frank, think of me.
Yeah.
Okay, that's critical, because there are people out there that I really know, like, and trust a lot, but I couldn't spot an opportunity for them if it came up and bit me.
Yeah.
So that's the second piece. And that's what really kind of that presentation's about. And then the third piece is helping people become comfortable talking about what it is you do. So I know, like, and trust you. You've taught me what to recognize with respect to a good opportunity for you. When I see it, I need to be able to ask a question or start a conversation that's going to lead back to you, right?
Yeah.
So I run into somebody, you're having problems with ABC, have you thought about doing things like this? Listen, I know a guy, I should put you in contact with him. The two of you should talk. That's what we're educating people on in the groups, to learn how to talk like that. Because the reality is if you're an attorney or you're an accountant or a tax consultant, you spend your day, I spent my days talking with other tax consultants. We told tax jokes, we used lingo, we did all those things, and most people don't know what we're saying. We're speaking English, but we're talking a tax dialect. And what we need
Really?
right. So what we need to do, and we're all guilty of this, we need to train other people. We need to talk in a fifth grade manner to other people so they can understand it. And that's a lot of what we do in that portion of the meeting. And then, the meeting finishes up by everybody going around and just talking about what's a good referral. And that's, it all happens within 75 minutes. But then there are lots of things that happen throughout the week. People go to lunch together, and they're referring business. They're meeting with clients together, and those things are happening.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool. I like the sound of that. It's and I really like the way you say that. Like, the focus is not on send me referrals, but really focus on how to recognize opportunities. I haven't actually heard anyone do it like that before, so that sounds super interesting, and it kind of teaches people as well, not just to focus on send me referrals, but actually it forces them to think about, how do I ask for it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's like, because a lot of people have heard this, like, oh, every time you have a client, you should always ask them for referrals, right? But again, like, even if you have clients, like client might have a problem, but they might not have all the potential problems.
Right.
So again, like, if you're talking with a client and say, oh, by the way, if you know anyone with these sort of challenges, you should send them my way, right? So
right.
I really like the way of thinking with that.
Yeah, sense. Well, I just see a lot of people shooting themselves in the foot needlessly, not presenting them. And it's not that they present themselves in a bad way, but they just say things, they use jargon. They assume that everybody understands what they're saying. And I always joke that it's the wonderful thing about Midwesterners, that the good thing is we're really nice, and the bad thing is we're really nice, but it's probably worldwide, is that people are really nice. And so if you say something and I don't understand it, I'm just going to shake my head and smile, because I don't want to offend you and I don't want to look stupid. But if we're really in kind of a professional relationship where we're in it to really help each other, I need to stop you and say, wait a minute, I don't understand what you just said. Can you give me an example? Can you talk, get rid of the jargon? And if you do that, I might say, oh, okay. I get it. And I always tell people, don't tell me what you do. Tell me when you do it. Okay. A realtor. I know a realtor buys and sells property. I know that. That's what they do. But the when is more important. If you know somebody who's living in an apartment and just had a baby, that's a when. Those people, need to get out of that 400 square foot apartment and need to get a house. Or probably want to get a house. Okay, that gets me thinking, okay, who do I know who's in an apartment that's having a kid or has kids? I can refer you to them. So those are a lot of things we talk about in the groups, just to try and get people thinking differently about it.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. That sounds really good. So yeah, that's a good progression. So people helping people how to find networking opportunities, and then a little bit of how to go around it. Any other sort of key things around networking that you feel we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I think a big thing that's out there that people lose track of is reconnecting with people that they know. You know, we kind of move through life, and the technical term for it is what we call dormant ties. You know, you go to college and you meet these people and you have great relationships, and then you all move on. You all scatter to your parts of the world, and we have this assumption that, you know, the guy we knew in college is still. I always joke about it. You know, Bert, he's just the fraternity drunk. You know, he was the life of the party. That's what he's always going to do, right? And we just have this assumption that that's where he stays. Our lives move along. He's just staying there, and so we're reluctant to reconnect with those people. But what we fail to realize is Bert, you know what? He had a lot of fun in college, but he got his act together. He got a master's degree. He got a PhD. Now he's a professor. He's somebody to network with. And he has lots of experiences and information that I might not have. Kind of like you talking about with getting to know the IT or the administrative people. They see, you know, we're all kind of looking into the same building, right? But looking through different windows from different sides and seeing different things, and they kind of can help give us a better picture as to what things are about. So I think that's a critical piece, is stopping and thinking about the people that you know in your life that you've kind of lost touch with, and making a point of, not every day, but every so often, maybe once a month, reaching back out to somebody and just reconnecting and just, hey, I haven't talked in a while. And LinkedIn is it's so easy with LinkedIn, right? There's no excuses anymore. You know, back in the 80s and 90s, you know, you'd lose touch with people and you just have to see them at a reunion, and hope you ran into them at a reunion. You know, now it's like you can find anybody. It's great.
Yeah, I would say that the one thing I bumped into, because I used to have like a ginormous spreadsheet of, ended up with thousands of people, to be honest with you, people I knew and people I'd met and people I worked with. And initially I was so focused on trying to stay in touch with everyone. And, you know, I had to also be realistic sometimes and say, you know, like, you can touch base with someone once in a blue moon, but like, don't expect to talk to thousands of people every 3 months, right?
Right.
Even if you spend all your living day hours, that won't happen, right? So, yeah, I definitely seen it from both sides, right? So,
yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, there's a lot of people that people lose track with, and the thing is, like I have people I was really good friends with 10 years ago, and I maybe haven't seen them for 10 years, but I still know that if we would meet tomorrow, like, we would still be amazing friends, right?
Yeah, right.
And we would still trust each other and all that. So, and yeah, and exactly as you said, Kurt, that used to be the center of the party, he knew a lot of people, and he probably still do.
Yeah.
So
well, and that's, I mean, get back to what I said before. The reason you're not getting referrals, it's only three things, right? Relationship. The relationship is there. You just need to get together with Kurt. I think you said his name was, you know, and get him up to speed on what you're looking for. Hey, these are the people I'd like to meet. You know, how can I help you? You know, this is what I need. How can I help you? You know, and then just kind of, you know, talking through those second 2 points.
Yeah. That sounds great. I really like that, Frank. That's been very good talking about. Any sort of resources or any sort of other tools or tips or likes that you would like to share with the audience?
You know, there's just a ton of information out there. I have a podcast. It's called Networking RX, and I put out a couple episodes a week, you know, talking about these topics. I like to focus a lot on the science of relationships. When I say we, you know, humanity has uncovered so many interesting things about how we interact in the last 20, 30 years. It's really amazing. These things have always worked, and we've just kind of done them and not really known that there was kind of science behind them, but there is, and it's really kind of an amazing thing. And I talk a lot about those sorts of things, like that study I talked about, the small talk study. I continually stumble across those things because it's really, networking. It's not about sales. It's about relationships. It's about how people perceive us and how they feel around us, and those are the important things that So my podcast, Networking RX, a lot of great books out there. You can see I got tons of books here. A couple really good ones that this is a good one by a professor at the University of Michigan. It's called All You Have to Do Is Ask by Dr. Wayne Baker, for people who aren't watching the video feed. It's All You Have to Do Is Ask. Great book. What he has found is that the thing that really separates us from the help that we need is not the generosity of others, but our unwillingness to ask. It's really what it boils down to.
Totally get it.
Yep. And then the second book by a guy by the name of David Burkus, and it's hard to read the title, but it's called Friend of a Friend. And the premise, he talks about dormant ties in here, but what he also talks about is he talks about that our networks, the real power of our network is not necessarily the people we know, but the people we know. If you can follow what I just said.
The people you have access to some degree.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't look at it that way. We look at it as kind of one-dimensional. Well, I know you, and you're just pouring my coffee. What can or hey, we're just friends, but your friend might know people, and there's a real potential there. And I tell people, when you walk into a room, don't look at the people in the room as the potential. The potential is everybody they know. So that's a great book as well. There's lots of good stuff out there. Lots of podcasting's great because you get people like you get people like me who are really kind of doing our best to share information unlike it's ever been shared in the history of the world. I listen to a lot of podcasts. It changes from time to time. I just, you learn and you get different interests. There's no excuse not to continue to learn.
Totally. Yeah. I would say from my side, I think probably the biggest game changer for me in my life totally have been learning and becoming an absolute expert at the DISC behavior framework.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard about DISC?
Yeah.
That's for me as well, with communication, with networking, communicating with other human beings. It is such a game changer. So
yeah. No, yeah, education. It's all out there. It's amazing. It's funny because you used to be, get in a conversation with friends and you have these little debates like, who has the record for the most assists or something like that. And it's like, you sit there and years ago, you just argue about it. Right now, it's like, hey, just pick up your phone. Let's look up the answer. It's all out there.
Yeah. Totally. That's excellent, Frank. Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Pleasure talking with you. And thank you to all the listeners. I'll see you again next week.
Thank you for listening to the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Please leave a review. It means the world to us. You can also learn more about management at madsingers.com.